You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Okay, that one worked. All right, we're in. Hey, everybody.
Only a handful of people know what it's
Whoa.
like to be an astronaut.
Good morning, Mike.
Hi there.
Today is March 10th, 2017. It's All Things 3D.
It is.
What are we looking at here, Mike?
Well, we are looking at ISS VR. This is something, again, supported by the Oculus Studio. And this is a little demo that kind of shows you going through the ISS and then obviously pulling out. But the cool thing is, this is a VR experience that allows you to kind of experience what it's like to be on the ISS.
Wow. Is that out?
It's out. In fact, I tried it this morning, and I'd have to say, as I jump to my next screen, so here it is. You can go ahead. If you've got an Oculus, you can download it now. Or if you got an Oculus account and has an HTC Vive, you can download it and then use the trickeries to use the HTC Vive. And we'll talk about that with Robo Recall here in a few minutes. But so here it is. Here's some images. And you kind of, it's kind of cool because, as you know, in space, you're kind of weightless. And because of that, you can kind of float around. So, however, with that being the case and being disembodied and moving, as you know, moving in VR without your body actually moving is, in my opinion, the most what do you want to call it? VR sickness inducing process. So that's why a lot of games either have you stationary and objects moving around you, but your body. Now, keep in mind, probably this would be the case if you're weightlessness in space, because again, you have no real, your equilibrium is off, the inner ear canal is off. So more than likely you would probably vomit or visit this location, which is a shot that I had taken.
I just thought of the Oculus having, we got a 3D print an accessory for a barf bag to go over that hangs down from your
iPhone. Some clips with those little inline bags. However, this is, I floated through it. You can actually grab the handles and push off. So it's kind of cool if you've got the controllers and you can push off. But yes, I did feel a little nauseated. So I had to head to this little location on the ISS. Now, some reason I couldn't, and I didn't have, maybe I didn't spend enough time, but I couldn't lift up the latch. Now, if you're not familiar with it, this is the ISS toilet. And so you can actually go through it, and literally, as you know, with the ISS, you go up and down through ports, and you actually feel like you can push off and go down into a port, up in a port. You know, I guess because we still feel gravity, even though we're motionless or moving through space, I think that's probably what's causing us to feel ill. I'm assuming, again, I've never been in space, so we'd have to get somebody on who has. I'm assuming that going into a scene like this would probably still be barf inducing, but you probably would get used to it. I don't know. But maybe we'll have to go out and actually hear how they actually adjust to it. But obviously they do adjust to it, because I don't see a lot of vomit floating around in the ISS. And also they have a lot more training than we do, as you know, the vomit comet and so forth. But if you want to experience this, and the detail is immaculate. Now, that video I showed you is also done in a 4K video. So if you've got a 4K monitor, head down, it's on YouTube. Watch it. It is stupendous, but the visuals are good. Now, the problem is, once you see the 4K video, then you hop into your Oculus, and then I'll jump back to my screen here. The problem is the images, because you have limited visibility, not the resolution within your Oculus, they're not quite as sharp. Now, again, the immersion is there. It's still high quality for what you get, but the problem is, if you're expecting it to be these high detailed models with sharpness, you're going to be sadly mistaken. In fact, the opening, I noticed some aliasing and also some texture vibration that could have been adjusted, but it's minor. The experience is super cool, and I would have loved to see this with like the space shuttle back in its day. But the fact is, kids today, now the point is, if you remember, the Oculus has this big warning that comes up that says, if you are not, what is it, 13 and above, which is sad because I think kids would really enjoy this and actually be able to experience something that, for the most part, we haven't. And this is really,
what does the warning say if you're 13 and
you're
below?
not supposed to be using it. Yeah,
so they don't. I mean, it's not like it's a law.
No, of course not. I mean, it's up to the parents or the individual, but you know, we don't really know the effects of it, and maybe we'll spend a little bit more time in a latter issue. I'm planning to do a seminar here in Portland, probably in 2 or 3 months, talking about the psychology. As you know, my wife's a psychotherapist. You know, you've been watching this show for some time. You're probably aware of that already. And so we're going to go through and kind of talk about it. It's kind of like video gaming addiction that we did some seminars in 2009. A lot of the same things apply. Plus, we have other things. What is this doing to us? And as you know, from being a developer for the last 2 years, I have some thoughts on it myself from practical experience. But we plan to do probably an hour and a half seminar here in Portland. I'll go ahead and videotape it, or videotape it. Do we even do that anymore? Either live stream it so that it'll be available to everyone. But that brings me into my next subject right away. I'll segue into it. And the theme of our show is, you know, can you get drunk in a virtual pub? So the whole point is, are we reaching the point with our virtual experiences here that we can hang out in a virtual setting and feel as though we're there? Now, we just showed that with the ISS, be able to float around and move around. Yes, there I am, Mr. Cardboard, hanging out in my little virtual pub that I'm creating. I'm creating a little demo for Monday, which is our Portland VR meetup. And Chris, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a scene there. And you know, I've got my little bottles next to me. But the whole point is, are we going to get to the point that we can experience a lot of the similarities? And some of the thoughts that I've come up with, you know, as you know, here in Portland, the sun never shines. Actually, we do have some sunshine today. Yay. But normally it doesn't. Lots of rain, a lot of clouds. And as somebody said to it, it only rains twice in Portland. And that is winter, summer. I don't know, something like that, meaning all the time. But with that being the case, I'm assuming, as in England and other areas, there's the case of depression. If you're always in grayness, are there ways around? Now, I'm thinking VR might serve a purpose there. You've heard of, what is it, the
blue light therapy?
Blue light therapy. The wavelength can be reproduced depending on your optics, but you should be able to create a simulation that allows a person to experience within their VR setting, something like that. So I'm going to look in and research that and see if that's possible. But, you know, even with something as simple as Google Cardboard, putting 5 minutes laying back in your bed and imagining you're on a beach or something, you know, we'll see what the studies show on that. But I'm seeing that could be a practicality in the future. But yeah, I'm thinking that VR has a lot of applications, and we're going to talk a little bit about later. As you know, last week you weren't here, but we talked about GDC. Was it Ars Technica did a kind of a synopsis of, you know, where is VR going from a GDC's perspective? We'll talk about that, and obviously a lot more going on. So, Chris, I think, yeah, you can probably start us off with the first. Oh, actually, I've got the first item, so I'll go ahead and just move right into it. And
Robo Recall, haven't even had a chance to even try that yet.
Well, Chris, you're falling behind here. So, first of all, if you haven't tried Robo Recall, if you have an Oculus Rift CV, this is one of the advantages. Now we're starting to see some great stuff coming out free. In fact, Robo Recall, if you've got an Oculus, is free. So it's able to be downloaded. I did it last week before the show. Yeah, it's fun. However, I do have some concerns with the Oculus versus the HTC Vive, is that you're limited. You know, again, excuse those out there who already know better. You can provide another camera for what they call the experimental mode to give you full 360, but for the most part, you're limited to what you see in front of you. In fact, the original Robo Recall had a advisory, a warning that identified if you went too far to the left or right, it would say, hey, you've only got a limited viewpoint from the front of you, turn back around. So with the HTC Vive, that isn't as critical, and somebody has already modded it, but we'll get to that moment. But the whole point is there's a modding kit. If you remember Unreal Tournament and a few other Unreal games, they normally have a modding system which includes the editor. Robo Recall is no different, and you can go ahead and download it. It's part of the Epic Unreal. If you've already got that on your machine, if not, download it, and then you can download the content and immediately start to put it to use. So there's some guides here, how to install the Robo Recall mod kit, installing a Robo Recall mod, and then enabling the mod. And what that allows you to do is possibly change out your guns if you want to, adding new maps. So you could, I don't know if there is a multiplayer mode. I haven't played it, but if there's a multiplayer mode, that would be kind of fun to create a map. And I wouldn't put it past somebody to already move forward with something like that. So it is cool. It's visually very appealing. In fact, I found myself ducking on a few times when things would come at me. And then with the controllers, you have interaction with your hands. Download it if you got Robo Recall, if you want to get your hands or feet dirty as far as trying your own mods. If you don't have any experience with the Unreal Engine, there's plenty of information, a lot of YouTube videos, and I will probably do a little section because I'm creating something new to show off on Monday that I'm going to bring up a little bit later. So that's that. And then the other thing is, if you have an HTC Vive, don't worry. You're not out of luck. Somebody created a mod called Robo Revive. And
of course they did.
You can go out to Libra VR out on GitHub and download the actual binaries so that you can install it, and it gives you the full instructions and how to go about doing so that you can play it on your HTC Vive. I have not done it yet. Basically, I've been using my editing workstation to do most of my stuff, which has only the Oculus VR. So I will try it because something a little bit later I'll talk about. I just built myself the Supreme Dark Overlord. That's what I call my machine. It is the best PC yet. And I'll tell you why a little bit later. Okay, so here's the two items. They'll be in the links in the show notes. So go out and grab it if you've got an Oculus, even if an HTC Vive. Now, keep in mind, it says you have to have an account. Now, how do they know if you have an Oculus Rift? Because that's the only way you can get this. So I'm assuming this is people like myself who have both units. However, I won't go there, but obviously if you want to figure out some other way of getting this, there probably is some route. Okay, so that's about it for the in the past as well as our opening item. And can you get drunk in VR? I don't know, possibly. Yeah, you can at least get sick. So we'll move on to your first item, Chris.
You could definitely get sick. All right. Well, this one came via Hackaday. Hackaday.io, one of my all-time favorite websites, is incredibly there's so much information. It's a collective of people that like to hack all kinds of things, and so definitely want to give a huge shout out to Hackaday because they've been growing, it seems like, crazy lately, and really expanding how much news they have and kind of newsworthy items that they have. This is a project called ODrive, and it's high performance motor control for hobby brushless motors. So, hobby brushless motors are incredibly cheap and powerful, as you know, and however, we need to make robots out of them. And so these guys have figured out a way to make this, let me pull up my screen a little bit there so we can see a little bit better. They figured out how to make a driver board to basically turn brushless hobby motors using, an onboard ESC into a, like a stepper motor type application. So they have all these videos showing kind of what they're what they're working on. Here you can see a demo of one of the machines. And I have a link in the show notes directly to their Hackaday project. So I don't think they've had a Kickstarter quite yet, but this thing is moving fast. And I know the feed probably isn't quite as fast. You know, the screen sharing is not going to be as fast for you. So, but definitely a worthwhile project to check out. And I think they're probably going to have a Kickstarter coming up that we might be able to back to get some of these made if you had an interest in getting your hands on some brushless motor controllers. Because, I mean, I've got a bunch of these brushless motors lying around from, you know, crashed quadcopters and, you know, other little hobby projects I've worked on with motors. But you can't really use them. There's not an easy way to use them in a like a stepper type situation, and because there's not really easy libraries to do that. It's you know, they just don't have control. So this apparently this controller that they're working on can get within plus or minus 0.2 degrees per revolution, which is pretty good. Even for a stepper, that's, you know, I mean, it might not be 3D print accuracy, but for a lot of things, it's pretty good. So pretty cool project. Head over to Hackaday, and then also probably want to just check out some other projects while you're over there.
Okay, well, let's stay on a little bit of hardware here. I know for some of you, this probably doesn't mean anything, but to people like myself, this does. NVIDIA just released an announcement that you can get a Jetson TX2 now. Now, you know, I've talked about the TX2. TX1 is the SoC NVIDIA chip that, if you're familiar with something else that was just released last week or early this week, that was, I don't know, something, a Nintendo Switch, something like that. No, just kidding. Yes, the big news was Nintendo finally released the Switch. It's got some pluses and minuses if you've been looking at the reviews, but most importantly, from a hardware perspective, it has the TX1. But the one that a lot of people have been salivating over, including myself, is a TX2, which is based on the Pascal SoC design and has a different architecture, basically using their own ARM devices, but more importantly, performance as well as battery or power consumption is less than this. Now, the thing is, on the TX2 module, now it's only, as it shows there, you can only be notified. It's not available for sale yet, and I have some feelings it's probably going to be somewhat pricey. The previous TX1 module system was, the Jetson TX2 was $500. So I would not be surprised if you're going to see a higher price of maybe $700 to $1,000. Now the TX2, this tells you the differences between the two. As you can see there, it uses a Denver. This was something that they had created in their K1. Was it the K1? And then they jumped to the TX1, which went with a standard ARM. They've gone back to that. The ability to encode video, their ability to process through the DSPs. As you can see there, there's multiple items in this device that makes this one beneficial to people who are doing AI and visual, what do you want to call it, tracking. This was the thing, and we've covered it in previous NVIDIA presentations. They've been pushing this for autonomous vehicles and using this type of device. In fact, there's a dual version of this that's you can buy for your cars. The fact is that it's available. They're going to have an SDK and that allows vision AI to be available is super cool. And I look forward to seeing that. However, I have some other interesting uses for this, which I can't really talk about it right now, but I am really excited about this. As you can see there, the board itself is fairly small, but the developer kit is like 4 times its size or even more. It's still fairly compact. It's about the size of a large or a mini ITX board. But the fun thing is that there are already companies, and supposedly this was supposed to be drop-in compatible. We'll see if that's the case. But if it's drop-in compatible, there are already little daughter boards that you can buy for this that provide all the external inputs and outputs so that you can make a more compact product. And obviously you can customize it. They have a full kit available so that you can go out there. There's schematics, build of material, PDFs, so that you get an idea of what's required in order to build an accessory board for this. There's the full pinouts available for the TX2 already, but there are companies already making these boards. They're about $200 to $500. So that makes this a fairly pricey small device. But if you wanted something very compact and very powerful, I don't think there's anything. I know the TX1 from my own designing is about twice the performance of the latest Snapdragon. It compares well to Apple's own A10 processor. In fact, I found that it actually performs better than that. A lot of things I've done in Unity, I've exported to the TX1, and they run, I'd say, about 50% faster in most cases. TX2 supposedly doubles that. More to the point, you can get the same performance with less power, which is important if you want to create a mobile device. So really looking forward to this. All right, Chris, next item for you.
All right, so we are looking at Raco. This is a Chinese company. They've been around for a little while. I've seen their stuff floating around as SLA. They make like kind of larger. They're a Chinese company, Raco, and they have announced this Raco FDM Plus, a high precision desktop machine. So, kind of one of the things, but this is notable. Was a notable mention in the 3D community, 3D printing community in the last week or so, because for a while there's been kind of a gap in between desktop machines like the Ultimakers and the even the Lulzbot printers, the RepRap machines, and then there's a gap from $5,000 to $50,000 when you want to step up and get like a Stratasys or something that's in the industrial grade machines. This is kind of somewhere in the middle ground, and it's got 32-bit double CPUs on it, so for high stability and for complex part geometries, you won't skip any steps. It's got full lead screw design through the Z-axis. I don't know if that means that it's on the XY axis as well. And then it's fully enclosed, has a 0.2 millimeter nozzle and a 20 micron high accuracy precision. So it looks like a pretty cool machine to check out. They have some sample parts you can check out. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Here's the lead screw designs that they have. Okay.
Is that their board? Notice it seems to run a dual 32-bit double CPUs. So I don't know if they're used in redundancy, but
yeah, it's an industrial grade. Yeah.
ARM chips. So this thing probably processes and performs fast. I know that some of the earlier ARM systems took, like a snail's pace. I mean, obviously printing is slow, but trying to port stuff to it can be slow as well, and that would actually push the.
Yeah, and then they've got it's a fully enclosed, and then they've got this unique to X air duct design, so it will actually adapt the airflow depending on the filament that you're using. Here's a look at their nozzles. They've got everything down to a 0.1 to 120 micron nozzle, all the way up to a 400 micron nozzle. Yeah, and so they've got this glue invention, they say, and it's funny. Obviously, they have some English on their website. Original patent in glue invention, easily to handle model when printed and after printing. Model with adhesive bottom is not easy to fall off when printing, but the model can be easily removed after cooling. The success rate of printing is over 95%. So they're showing kind of a model that typically would be pretty hard to print, and then they have these little tiny prints that they're showing off that normally you'd have to do SLS or SLA,
Yes.
you know, and they're printing these FDM. And the funny thing is, you dig into the specs of this printer, and they're using Cura and Simplify 3D. So,
well, go back and look at the design a little bit. If you look at the way they have their ducts, the dual ducts on the side with the ports, it kind of looks like some other product that's out there. I don't know. Starts with a U.
yeah, well, I think Ultimate, it's not like Ultimaker or even Lulzbot invented that design. The dual fan blowing, that's been around for I think that patent, it has long been expired. That actually, all the Stratasys machines have had that on it for probably as long as 20 years. They've had some sort of fan moving over the...
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just the way that they're, what do you want to call it? The houses.
They're designed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that I really do like about the Ultimaker 3s is the hot swap nozzles. I think that that's a big, that was an industry first. And I have, most of the nozzles can be changed on most of the machines pretty easily. The Lulzbot less so. But the cool part about the Ultimaker is it's completely toolless. So you don't need any tools to take out a nozzle. You just, you want to change a nozzle. And I have a feeling they're going to have more nozzles for more materials coming down the pipeline. So yeah, I figured this machine was noteworthy, and that some of our listeners would definitely appreciate hearing about Raco 3D. You can check them out at raco3d.com.
Was there a price with this?
So far, I haven't seen a price. But I know they're going to be unveiling this. They're going to be showing it off at a TCT show coming up.
Okay. Well, why don't you earmark it and let us know what it costs in the future. Looks like something I might want to look at. Okay.
Yeah. So
let's move on into, that's the small scale. Let's move on into large scale. So this has been in the news for some time. Epis Core has, and they have an office in San Francisco as well as Russia. They have created, and let's see if this little flash animation will run. Essentially,
we print buildings.
Yes. So, and actually, I don't know. Let's see why it takes a little bit of time. Maybe I can show it down here. Is there a little video? Yeah, let's run the little video. So essentially, do you hear the audio on this? Probably not.
No.
Okay. So only I get to hear it. So they print buildings, but essentially they were able to create, here they show it.
Oh, I saw footage of this. But the thing's inside the thing you're building. Right? Well, yeah, they're trying to raise money right now on Indiegogo, right? For this project. Indiegogo has a side of it called Generosity, and they're trying to raise money using this technology to build a vet, a U.S. vet.
Oh, well, cool for them. Well, in an article that was
$100,000 for it.
Yeah. Well, they built a home, and it's the one that's up here. I'll let the video run a little bit. But essentially, it appears to be some type of extrusion system with concrete. This is not something new. We've seen this before. Their style of head and their arms seems to be a little unique. But the Chinese have shown a number of these type of things being done. We talked about a group in Spain using a device. It's not something new. But the fact is that we're seeing more and more of it, and the fact that this was done in less than 24 hours. And here's the house that was in the news. Let me go ahead and bring that up. So this was the house, and it was around, actually, there we go. So they were able to build this in 24 hours, and they say for about $10,000.
Wow.
I'd live in that. Yeah, I'll build one in my backyard.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Cool.
Way cool.
There it is.
Wow.
Isn't that neat? I mean, obviously there's not a whole lot of space, but
Yeah, but think about it. I mean, like, you know, talk about for Mars missions,
yeah.
you
So
know.
here we go. Cost of construction, 10,000. I mean, even break it down. Foundation was 277, walls 1624, floor and roof, wiring. I mean, basically for $10,134, you can have a small, you know, trailers are even more expensive than this, and then
Oh
you could
yeah,
have
yeah,
it
yeah.
built.
Yeah, trailer has to have a
Yeah,
whole chassis and brakes and wheels and axles, and trailers are expensive.
and it looks cool.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does.
Now, obviously, one of the reasons for this design is that they put the actual printer on a center hub and then printed around it. So I'm assuming that if you wanted just a you probably can't hear this, so
No.
so it's fun. I'll make sure that obviously it's the link will be in the show notes, but it's obviously all Russian. They're speaking English, but with Russian accent. But yeah, it's kind of a neat design. Obviously, this particular design is a little bit more fancy than just a cylinder, but I could see a cylinder being done even quicker. I don't know, very neat, very interesting. It's too bad that we're not getting along with the Russian. No, just kidding. So I don't know, kind of cool.
Very cool.
Again, like they have a San Francisco office. Supposedly, I thought this was also, they made one of these in San Francisco too. So they are local, and you know, they're only a hop, skip, and a jump from me now that I live in Portland, closer to you, Chris. So maybe you can have them come down and build this, you know, down there in a homeless shelters. That would be kind of.
There you go. That's actually, you know, not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
Not at all.
Well,
okay,
okay. Well, moving on. 3D in medicine, obviously. This one was for all those people out there that are using Simplify 3D, or not Simplify 3D, 3D Slicer. 3D Slicer. I've been doing some bone models for some veterinary surgeons.
yes,
actually, one is I've been actually dealing with one up in your neck of the woods, up in Portland, and so 3D Slicer is kind of a PC version. I know Osirix is another one. Osirix.
That's one that you have been using in the past. I've got a version.
That's one for Mac, and that one is actually like highly regarded because a lot of these vets and surgeons actually are Mac people. You know, a lot of them are still Mac, or they are Mac people. And so Osirix, and I've gotten to play in it over at a veterinary surgeon that I work with, a colleague of mine. He's given me some demos of it, and it's extremely easy to use to go from CT data over to 3D printable models, or at least STLs that then I can pull into like a program like SpaceClaim and then clean them up. So, but a lot of people want like you might want to play around with 3D Slicer or DICOM. You want to have access to these DICOMs, but you don't have access to like 3D models or the DICOM images to get the scans of like humans or whatever. If you want to play with the software to figure it out, if you wanted to get into it. So somebody posted a link to this Japanese website that actually has some great 3D models freely available that you can download on this website. I put it in the show notes, and it's at lifesciencesdatabase.jp, and you can go in.
You must have missed that episode that we did, Chris.
Yeah, no, I know you've talked about it before, but I just wanted to remind people. And then this has been, I think it's a little updated, but there's some great models in here that are all over the human body, and you can go and download them, and you can see how to extract stuff, and you can have reference material. There's actual OBJs in here, and there's some great models that you can go and check out. So I put the show notes in there, and if you want to go and get into 3D Slicer and see how to make OBJ or STL files from an STL in 3D Slicer or Osirix, there's a resource for you.
Yeah, and Chris, on that note, we'll probably go back and revisit. I know that there are a few other applications out there that are low cost or free, even for the PC now. So as you know, I used that in the past. That's how I created Siobhan's skull, and her brain is by using 3D Slicer, but it's kind of like a Swiss Army. It's like Blender for the DICOM world. So there's a lot of tools in there. It's used a lot for research, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. So there are other tools out there. Maybe we'll revisit them that are less than $100 that make that whole process easy. Also, I don't know if you're aware of this, but even Photoshop has the ability to bring in DICOM slices and do things with them. So maybe we'll revisit that and spend a little bit of time, maybe next week or the week after. And as you know, one of the reasons I spend so much time in VR is tangible models are great, but they require a 3D printer, they create time, and they cost money. And my goal is, before you even get to that stage, to be able to visualize in 3D space by walking around actual objects from DICOMs, 3D Slicer, and so forth, using the HTC Vive, or even something as minuscule as the Daydream viewer from Google with your smartphone. So all of this is what I'm looking at, and then you can share that with other physicians or other people. But I think be able to visualize it in VR and then print it, I think, is the evolution. If you remember, there was a company, I'm going to mention their name again, even though they're on my bad list, 6 Sense. Remember, they had another product that was supposed to be able to design in the VR world. Nothing ever came of that, but that kind of gave me that, you know, this was back in 2013, and even though we've had other applications, that kind of gave me the incentive to move forward with it from a medical perspective. As you know, I'm also going to be talking a little bit later about how can we apply this from an architectural perspective. As you know, I've moved into a new home. We've made some changes, and I'll show some images of how we were able to test paint colors, tile designs, even before somebody comes in. And for those who are a little visualization challenged, this is a perfect tool. And I'm working on some tools myself, development tools, to make this easier for everybody. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I'm going to move on to my little item here, Chris. I actually have a 3D in medicine, and I think this is extremely cool. Now, this is 3D bioengineered brains, but essentially they were able to extract tumor cells, and then using a lattice, that should sound familiar. Remember when we had Rice University talking about their lattice system using sugars and then dissolving it in order to create a cell structure. Well, this is a similar process done by Min Tong Shomer, assistant professor at Connecticut Children's Medical Center, where they actually take brain tumor cells, grow them, and then by doing so and basically deriving a tumor again, they can then attack this tumor with different drugs. So unlike normally what occurs, we basically put the human subject through a lot of pain and anguish through chemotherapy and other approaches, and then, you know, the person gets extremely sick, and then we find out that it doesn't work very well, and then we start another battery of tests. This way, if we actually test the tumor, the actual cells themselves, with the different cancer fighting drugs, we save the actual patient a lot of trouble. And I really see that this being something very important in the future, where we can customize a drug specifically to the individual. And so kind of cool, neat little paper. There's a white paper out there as well that talks about this whole process. But again, we're seeing more. Geez, I double talked there. You're seeing more of this lattice structure in order to grow. And, you know, even though 3D fabrication is a little bit of a stretch, the fact is they're using a lattice structure to actually create a three-dimensional growth is a little different than your standard Petri dish, which is just basically cell layers upon cell layers. Now we can actually create them in a 3D structure. So I think that's extremely cool. Well, that's about it, Chris, on that item.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Crazy stuff that they're doing there.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, there's a lot. We need to revisit the guys out at Rice University. As you know, what they were trying to do is develop vascular system and waste systems for cells, because without them, the cells die. And so we'll need to go back and see where they're at it. Go ahead, Chris.
wow.
Next item.
Well, we could jump down to the VR corner if we want. And
I actually have a 3D scanning item.
yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. So let me jump back into it. In our 3D scanning section, Arctech Leo from Arctech 3D has just come out, or will be available. As you can see there, it's not on the cheap end. It's $25,000, $800. But what makes this unique is the whole thing is self-contained. And something else that I read earlier, and does it even tell you here? Oh yeah, it's no surprise there. It is using
The Jetson.
NVIDIA Jetson. Now this is the Maxwell, which means it's the TX1, not the one that we just talked about, the TX2, but I assume they'll probably move in that direction. But with this, and then has the built-in accelerometer and gyro, and a back-end screen, they're able to process and create models all in a handheld unit. Now, obviously, it's a little expensive, but most of the Arctech units are the $10,000 to $20,000 range. But the most important thing is, and I saw this in person, normally an Arctech hand scanner, I watch guys who, were a little bit muscular, holding the Arctech scanner in one hand and then a laptop in the other, and they were walking around in order to scan the object. It wasn't real time per se. Now you'll be able to do everything within the unit, including actually generate the 3D models. And so that'll be available. $25,000, a little bit out of my price range, but the fact is that you can do all of it in here. There's some built-in memory, as well as I think SD cards can be installed as well. Sorry, a built-in SSD drive, as well as flash cards, if I remember correctly. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at the specs, and it's pretty incredible. Some of their scans too. If you go under their applications and you go to check out some of their 3D scans that they have available, they don't have any. They're not showing anything from this new model that they have, but they have some past models, and it'll be interesting to see how the quality shapes up. Because I think Arctech is they're kind of one of the ones that's, as far as handheld, they're kind of like I would say a front runner for me. But yeah, they got to bring that price down. I've been using this week. I've been using this XYZ printer, and I think this was just a couple $100, and it's got that 6 cents. And their software's been getting a lot better, and it actually produced some scans. I was working on a project, and it produced some scans that were decent, at least for reference, So, because a lot of times I'll have to either take photographs, side profile views, and you have to make sure they're super dead on. A lot of times I'll lay a piece down on a piece of paper, just trace it, and then scan it into the computer and add dimensions. So, reverse engineering, it's a tricky thing, and it's not a one size fits all thing, but the scanning side of things, if we can get the scanning to a point where, you can at least get usable data in CAD, then I think that's a good deal it would be worth the investment for me, but not at $23,000. You got to do a lot of scan jobs to pay for a scanner. So,
well, and as you know, I started out in this area, and actually have a Next engine, which is good. It provides some decent scans, but the problem, as we both have found out, yes, it gives you a great model, like a lot of these here, for reference. They're not exact enough. More importantly, they can't be converted into a solid model so that you can actually create a machine component. Now, there are tools out there, and Artec are one of the best. So when you're buying an Artec scanner, you're also buying a great series of tools, which is what I was at. So they have like Scan to SolidWorks. They have the Artec Studio 11, some of the best tools around for doing 3D scanning, as well as cleanup. And then obviously tools to convert to solid models. So this is kind of what you're buying into, as well as these robust tools, as well as the scanner. Now remember, we just took a look at the Leo. This is the previous Ava version. It's about 10,000, and then they have a version with dual optics that's 20,000. So yes, the Leo is a little bit more expensive, but it's self-contained. And you know, if you're going to be doing this day in and day out, and actually it's 25,800, it might be something to look into. But I thought it would be kind of cool. Now there's, as you said, there are other smaller, lightweight, like the one that you have. Don't forget the structure sensor. Plus, if you can still get a hold of one, there is the prime sensors themselves. There's the Connect from Microsoft, if you can still get them, as well as RealSense from Intel, which is actually built into a few products, like one of my laptops. So there are other options, but
that's what this the XYD
is a RealSense.
Is a RealSense built in, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think Intel, you know, again, these companies are obviously front runners for now, but Intel has the ability. I mean, just like they do with their processor line, is, you know, they have the ability to just put $1 billion on the table and kind of be the best at whatever they want to be. And I think 3D scanning is one of those industries where, you know, I'd want to be careful if I was these guys and not. I mean, well, I think they're probably doing the right thing. They're probably pricing it right, because right now there's so few people clamoring for them, and the people that really need them will easily pay this money for them. But I'm sure Intel has some low cost options. You know, HP had that one laptop that had the top down scanner kind of built into it. You remember we saw that? Was that HP product? It's like a,
yeah, what was it called? The
all-in-one. Yeah, something like that. It was the all-in-one desktop, and it had a 3D scanner.
For schools, and I don't really know where that went to. It was still fairly hefty for school systems. Can't remember. It started with an S, and I saw that in person when I went to the Maker in San Mateo in 2015. But well, the other thing that protects companies like Artec 3D is their patents, and so that helps. The one that we've had on the show a few times now, and the name escapes me, there's a Chinese company, and we had them on because they're using their scanners to scan in a lot of museum pieces. There's somebody to look at as well. Now, they don't have an all-in-one unit, but they have a very reasonable $5,000, provides about the same quality as an Artec. So if you do need a scanner, you might want to look at it. And again, sorry for it may come back later, but go back 2 or 3 episodes. We did talk about them. And that is another alternative, and I would not be surprised if they have an all-in-one unit coming as well. But keep in mind, with a small, powerful laptop and these handheld units, you can get by as well. But the fact is, this is all self-contained using the NVIDIA chip. I thought was what made this unique. Okay, let's move into our VR section. Chris, you say you got something for us?
Well, I was just going to feed off of yours, so okay. You go for it.
All right, so I'm going to drop back in. Last week, you weren't here, but I talked about GDC. I personally did not go this year, but as many people, followed the news and gave some insight. One, I downloaded a lot of the gaming engines, or as I call them, real-time visualization engines, which have played a big part in VR. In fact, we covered a little bit about the Unreal Engine, which does VR on basically all platforms. Same thing with Unity 3D. Lumberyard is making kind of a strong entrance. They were announced in 2015, or excuse me, 2016. 2017, they refined it. They also have VR for both the HTC Vive and the Oculus, as well as OSVR, if I remember correctly. And don't forget the CryEngine, that has been available. But more importantly is what developers are doing with it. And this article from Ars Technica kind of goes through the future of the references of it. And, I have to agree with it to a certain extent. So they've got some images here. Well, I don't know what these images, it's a Genesis system, but so it's kind of a vague, but from my own personal experience as a developer, I personally see visualization being a huge center. And now that the tools are becoming more refined, you can actually design while you're in VR. Unreal has been doing that for, gosh, it's about 6 months now. They've had tools and they've been constantly refining them. And then Unreal will be Unity will be bringing their tools out in their next release that allows you, and you can get their experimental version right now if you want it, to be able to design while you're in the VR. I find them a little bit cumbersome. It's nice to jump into it to see, from a perspective of VR, but actually working with the tools, because maybe I'm clumsy with my hands. But next thing I know, I've like lifted half my assets up in the air and then have to constantly figure out how to do an undo to get myself back. Then moving around is kind of funky. So I kind of stayed out of it. It's kind of fun, especially in the Unreal Engine. And it has helped me to kind of get a better perspective of my latest project that I'll be showing off, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which I call VRPub. And you'll understand why in a few minutes when you see some of my screens on it. Okay, so that's that item. And then we'll move into my next item here. I thought this is cool. Avigent light field display. This guy wrote this pretty good, K.Guttag, I think, that says that some company has essentially developed something very similar to the Magic Leap, or let's say
this is the new Avigant product.
Avigant.
So Avigant, who has the Avigant glyph, not the Oculus Rift, but the
Correct.
Avigant glyph, they have the display that looks like headphones, and you push it down, and it has a laser that can beam it right into your retina, and it's supposed to be like awesome. Everybody I know that. Yeah,
except that's not how this one works basically
with light fill
and a DLP.
Yeah, and they have a great demo on their website talking about they can actually put things on different focal planes. So depending on where you're focusing is where you're actually looking. And apparently for augmented reality, this could be a breakthrough. So Avigant.
A couple of reasons why it would be a breakthrough. One, it's going to be cheaper. Two, and this guy makes the point, what was the $1.4 billion used for at Magic Leap? This company obviously doesn't have that kind of money, yet they're making some very strong, even though it's just an engineering prototype with cables. Supposedly they're dual HDMI and a USB 3. But as you said, they follow the eye and they project it using a DLP projector at about, when this particular version was 720p per eye, which is about what your Oculus is right now. And that's per eye in AR. That's actually better than the HoloLens from Microsoft. But as you said, because they're able to track the iris, they were able to refocus depending on what focus plane. Now, what is not clear, this is only a single light field, as you see here. So unlike what I've seen in the patents for the Magic Leap, which was actually layers, are they doing the shifting of focus on the fly in software? Meaning the algorithm, as you shift to a particular focus point, you're literally just redrawing and refocusing your plane, your single plane, to that new point in space. I don't know. So, but again, he calls it a bird bath, but essentially, as we've talked about before, it is a curved mirrored surface. In this case, it's 50% mirrored, where they reflect into it, and then you can view out and see the real world. Now, as I said, maybe I don't know if you were on that episode, I've actually tried the HoloLens for myself, and I was underwhelmed, but I thought it was very cool, especially from the tracking perspective. So the fact is that they have this available, and here's some points. So they talk about, here's your tunable lens. So in this case, this thing is actually a tunable lens that is mechanically adjusted. And the lens itself is tuned based upon where you're looking. So as you can see here, it modifies the focal point. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then here's your curved mirror, which brings it back into the eye. So pretty neat, huh? So
People
again,
pretty smart.
Yeah. So the whole point is you have this, as you call it, Avigent, who's able to show this at CES, and for far less than what Magic Leap has money for doing. And
I don't
they actually have
understand
a
this whole
unit.
Magic Leap thing. It's like they put videos on their website and then people give them billions of dollars, but it's like they don't even have a product.
Well, they've actually had some prototypes they've shown to people that were pretty interesting, obviously amazing, but they required a lot of hardware with the promise that they would be shrinking this down. And that's where the issues seem to be from the articles that I have read. And as you remember, when we went through in depth talking about all their patents, that like the DLP projector, which is a mechanical process that shrunk everything down to a bunch of little tiny mirrors on a substrate, that I could see this happening. Now what they're saying is that still can happen, but there's a lot involved with it. Most importantly, each of those planes require processing, and having enough processing to do that is a problem. Now, something I did find out is that they have been working with NVIDIA with the TX2. I was not aware anybody was working with the TX2. Supposedly they are. And that's how they're going to be able to move forward in creating a mobile unit. I don't know where they're at with that. So again, I don't think that's the case here with this unit from Avigent. It's essentially two HDMI, so each image or visual, what do you want to call it, light engine has a separate HDMI and then a USB 3 to control probably the focal plane and a few other things like your positional tracking and so forth, which is important. Plus, if they actually have iris scanning, that has to be fed back as well. And then, you know, like a lot of things, a computer has to handle this. And even though we've made some great strides with mobile phones with VR, you still need, in order to provide 90 frame or 120 frames per second, a beefy machine. And to shrink that down, I think NVIDIA is the place to look, but that's just my opinion. Okay, so there you go. I thought I'd bring this up. Great little article. Give this guy credit, K.Guttag, who's done a few articles like this and obviously knows his stuff. So that will be in the show notes. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see. Do you have a, I don't see it in the notes. Yes, you do have a print. Why don't you go on your Printwhisperer before I jump into mine? And
Sure.
I'll be covering a couple of items in my tech closet today. So go ahead.
Awesome. Well, Printwhisperer today, it's not going to be print related necessarily, but it's productivity and efficiency related. Productivity is the state or quality of producing. Efficiency is achieving maximum productivity within a minimum wasted effort or expense. So being efficient is important to any person running a business or in life in general. As you know, I run a business, and so being efficient is what it's all about. And so you may have heard the saying, work smarter, not harder, from your parents. And that's why we strive to have PCs with the latest, greatest specs on them so that we can shave microseconds off of every operation that we do throughout the day. And that adds up. Those little microseconds, they add up to a lot over time. And so today's tip is focused on computer efficiency. So I know I do, but I want to know, do you spend a lot of time writing emails with the same or similar content? I definitely do. And I want to tell you about a tool that I wish I knew about years ago. And I started using it, I don't know, in the last couple months I've been using it. It's called Text Expander. And so Text Expander is a little plug-in snippet that you run on your Windows PC or your Mac. And it's a program. They have a free trial for, I think it's 30 days or something. And then it's, I think, $60 for a premium for the year. And what it lets you do is you type in little snippets and then you a series of keyboard And I can actually give a little demo here of some of the ones. This is one of mine. And so there's this little program called Text Expander, and then you assign these little quick keys. So like if somebody of mine emails me asking me for a price on a 3D print, well, I can very quickly pull up my email in Thunderbird, which I'll do. And I can say, or I can hit reply to them, and then I can hit XRFQ, which is rapid form quote, and I can say, hey, Mike, this is to Mike Balzer. Hey, Mike, I've received and you can configure this within a few minutes. You can configure this snippet. I've received he sent me 4 parts. These parts would be best in, high density engineering grade ABS, and give him the price, $279.68, and the estimated completion date of about 5 to 7 business days. I hit OK, and it populates my email with the info, and then I can hit send, and it's off to him, saving me lots of valuable time throughout my day. Just that little snippet alone, might save you 15 minutes per day of having to retype those emails, or even copy pasting them and then reconfiguring them. So even 15 minutes per day, you do the math on that, that's an hour and a half a week, and an hour and a half per week over a year is about, what is that, 3 days of your time. So those little things like that are pretty important, those little efficiency tips, and that's why I wanted to share with you Text Expander, because it's added a whole lot of efficiency to my workflow, working on the computer all day. So textexpander.com.
Very cool. I'm going to get that. Yes, I find myself using the Control-C, Control-V a lot, with lots of screens open.
Yeah, and it's nice. You just put X, or you can use any key sequence you want, but something that you'll remember, I put X and then some other thing. So I have like confidentiality notices, and it'll apply to anything. It'll populate boxes anywhere that you want. It'll save hours, days, months, years of your life if you do this. If you write same or similar content and you don't lose that personalized touch, in your email at all, you can configure it, and there's already templates for you to set up. And so Text Expander.
Very, very cool. Okay, well, I've got a slew of things that I've been working on that I'm going to share. One of the first things I'm going to bring up, and I'll bring up my screen right now, this is Google Daydream. Well, Google Daydream, I think, is an underperforming headset. It was $49. Now it's back up to $79, so it's still somewhat expensive. I missed out on it. I was going to get another one, so bum on me. So as you can see, they're $79. Now, the reason why I wanted it is because I wanted 2 of these little controllers here. That's, to me, worth $49 because nobody else can make them. And I wish that they would provide more information on OEMs to make these, because there's no reason that you have to pay $79 for, in my opinion, an underperforming headset just to get this controller. This controller is probably worth $10, $15 on Amazon. I know, because I've got a $15 6 degrees of freedom, POS, Bluetooth, or even wireless, what do you want to call it? Hub, USB. Oh, well, losing my track here. I want to stay on topic here. So obviously I developed my own little product that I call the ODrive uPLAy Dreamtreader, which we'll talk a little bit louder. And Chris, I think hopefully you have some good news for me today. But let's say you have a Daydream, can't afford something else, but you want a better performing headset. So in my opinion, the way to get this is bring your eyes closer to those lenses. Now, that's something that people have learned with the HTC Vive. and we can apply this to this. Now, it's going to require you to pull out a pair of scissors and to actually cut out some foam. And I'll give you the results here in a moment. But if you look at the image I have above, essentially what you want to do is just cut out all this here so that your face sits closer to the lens. Now, something else I noticed, notice where the headband is. It's on the above. This is something in my own design. So essentially fits above the crown of your head. And that means that the lenses kind of sit below it, which means that you can kind of rest them on your nose. With that being the case, you can literally wear these like a pair of glasses. And the other thing is, I don't like anything touching my face per se. You know, it's bad enough to have something on your head, but like a goggle that's surrounding your face, especially if you have discomfort in materials. Let's say you have some allergy issues or allergic reaction to something like that. So the less that you have touching your face, I think is important. And more importantly, I think we need to start moving towards glasses. Where you just literally put them on, and then we have our VR. Now, we're going to get there eventually, but right now, phones are still heavy. You need support structures, and I've been working around that. But how can we do that with this? So let me bring up my screen, and I'll show you what I did. So essentially, if you look at my unit here, I cut out all that foam. And then I found, and I've been using some, I don't know, about 16th, 1/8 or foam, neoprene foam that I then lined it with. So this way, instead of having this half-inch barrier between your eyes, it literally fits very, very close to it. And what that does is it brings the lenses, even though, in my opinion, they're small. So there's a couple of ways to do this. You either create larger lenses, which is what's in my design, or you take those smaller lenses and bring them as close as you can to your eyes. That way you see less of the surrounding edge. And this is something that Oculus and HTC have learned with their 50mm lenses, is if you put them really close to your eyes, you don't really see the external edges, and it gives you a more immersive experience. So I've applied that here. Now, before you go, oh, I don't want to ruin my $79 headset, I will show you. Let's jump back to it. Down here, you can, for $14.99, buy that face pad. So you can buy an extra one and cut it up if you want to. In fact, probably do a better job than I did in cutting mine. But once you remove that external foam, then one, it fits much closer to your eyes. And then the headband, because it sits on top of your head, let's see if I can show that here. Let me jump back to my screen. Since it sits on the top of your head, then only the portion that has physical contact or pressure is the above part on your forehead. And then because I've removed all the foam, it kind of just drapes towards your cheeks here, and just kind of provides a much, in my opinion, airier feeling instead of this snug feeling all the way around your face. And more importantly, it brings the lenses closer. So in my case, it seems the focus is better, and more importantly, my FOV is better. So essentially, for no cost other than buying yourself a pair of scissors, if you don't have any, you can make your daydream a much better experience. So that brings me to my next little topic, is since I do a lot of testing and developing on the Google Daydream now, in the past, for me to show it on a show, I've had problems with some of the screens being dark. Well, they've just added in their latest update to Daydream a version. Let me see if I can bring up my phone here. Give me a moment. Find the screen. Here we go. So here's the regular screen. Now I'm going to bring up this, and this is a really cool little app. It's called Art Plunge, which I think is super. But now, because I have this enabled in my developer mode, I can now see the screen. But it shows it as a standard screen. It's no longer just a dual. So now I can show it to an audience like I'm doing now. So it's loading it. So I don't know if I can still use the controller here. Yeah, I don't think so. There we go. Okay, I can still use the controller. Now, this little Art Plunge is super cool. They've only got 2 demos, but imagine if you looked at a painting on a wall and the painting came to life.
Whoa. Whoa. Now you're not going to have the ability with this new developer mode to be able to move around, unless I can use my finger. No.
But notice she's actually moving. And with it on your head, it's like you're in the room now with her. So this is super cool. Now they've only got 2, and I can't remember the name of this particular, but let's go to the Mona Lisa. So let's go back and then swipe over. Notice her, she's blinking. Now you're part of the room, and you can look around, and somebody put some of his sketches over there on the right-hand side on a table. You can look out, but notice she kind of moves a little bit, looks at you, blinks. Isn't that awesome?
Crazy.
Now they've got 2 demos. It's free, so if you've got a Daydream device, grab it. And you know, I was hoping, oh man, they would have some more. So they have a Michelangelo, and I was saying, oh great, but no, sorry. But you can go out to their Facebook page, like them, and tell them what you'd like to see in a painting. And so this message comes up. So a couple of things here. One, this is called Art Plunge. It's free, no reason to try it out. Support them, but they're wanting, this is under construction, but if you've got a particular painting that you want them to bring to life, and again, you can't see it in the developer mode here, but you can literally move your head around and as though you're immersed in it. So very cool little mobile app, and I'd like to see more. But again, this is just another opportunity where we're now being part of an environment that didn't exist because of these creative, very talented designers here. And so I don't know, I think it's pretty cool personally. So there you go, 2 items there. There's a developer mode now that allows you to show off if you're a developer, or like me, now I can show off more Daydream. And, you know, for the cost of nothing and actually removing something, you can create a better FOV for your Daydream. Just as nice. In fact, it actually makes this thing usable for me, at least. But that's not the only thing I want to bring up. Let's bring up the new device, and Chris has been working on some prints for me. This is the NeoDVR uPLAy Dreamtreader. And essentially, it takes 42 millimeter aspherical Pima lenses and puts them as close as possible to your eyes with minimal play around the eyes. For instance, you just have a couple of baffles on the side, but brings the phone up to it, uses a headband design. And I have a few more images I can show you here. Here's an above view. So essentially, it sits in front of your eyes, and you put your phone in the case. And let's see if I have the front view. Let's use the side view. This will show it. So essentially, your phone is open. It's kind of like an exoskeleton. So it does a couple of things. Unlike the Daydream, which encloses the full back, which keeps heat in, the whole back is open. So you no longer have heat issues. So you can run longer. The other thing is, and you can't see it in this one, maybe this one will give you a better idea. There is a track to run a cable. So you can run on the back, and I'll go to the back view here in a moment. You can put a USB battery behind, run this cable through this cable channel, and continue to feed your phone for hours, depending on how large the battery is. So I have these little lightweight 1500 ampere per hour batteries, 5 volts, run it for about 2 hours more without actually discharging your batteries. So it's great for a movie on, you know, we talked about on airlines. But more importantly, the front portion of it, let's go back to this, has a little, let's see, this one will probably do a better job. There is a little cap on the bottom. It just kind of clips on, and then there are some magnets that latch it onto the front of it. So that way you can remove it quickly, get to the screen, put it back on it. Good thing about Daydream is once it's enclosed, it goes into the Daydream mode, and you can use the controller and not have to keep opening up with the phone. But I have noticed on occasion that they want you to get out of Daydream to make some changes to privacy settings or something, which is kind of cumbersome. This way allows you to release it very quickly. You can't see it that well, but there is a cardboard compatibility. There's a non-mechanical capacitive touch switch right between the eyes that you can touch in order to use cardboard for it. The other thing, and I don't know if you noticed it in the image here, but there is an NFC tag right down here. So you can close it in it and immediately puts it in the daydream mode, which is a unique feature. There's also, and you can't see it in this one, in the inside cover, there's an embedded magnet for that center placement. So that way, if you're off a little bit, it'll make sure that it's adjusted properly. So you don't have to worry about it. So that's embedded in as well. So I will be showing this off. Hopefully Chris will be able to get me the components to me soon, but I'll be showing this up on Monday and for the first time. Woohoo. I've got a version that's kind of held together with gaffer's tape, but the results, I think, are very surprising. End goal, make it less than $50. I'm looking for an OEM controller, and obviously right now that is the huge problem because the actual Daydream controller is not available to everyone. So that's the goal there. So other things that I've been working on, as I just mentioned, another demo that I'm going to be showing off is the bridge engine, but I am making a version of this, which is, we were talking about it. This is for the Unreal Engine, but this is the inside testing out things in my home. Let's see where some other images, and this is a render from SketchUp. So as you can see, I've added tiling in here, wood floors. So essentially, I've created textures and models of everything, and now I can actually go in Unreal and test it out. Now, the end goal is I'm going to create a virtual, what do you want to call it, display board that you can click on items and like change your floor color, change your tile colors, change the type of tiling, change your marble, change your cabinets, all within the app itself. So that way you get a very good idea of what things will look like in environments. I'll have different settings for different times of the day, as well as artificial lighting at different temperatures. So it gives you a very good idea, because one of the things that I found is that even if you get samples and you look at them in the store, a lot of times they use those fluorescent lights, which can be a problem when you bring them home and they don't look anything like the colors, because colorimetry is, a very complex subject, very subjective to based on the user. And somebody with a lot of experience can get you in the ballpark, but how many times have you said, gosh, that doesn't look like what I saw in the display room, or gosh, I didn't think it would look like this. This is where VR, I think, is going to have a tremendous change in the way we do things, because we no longer have to create tangible objects which cost money and time. We can throw them in the VR, get exactly what we want or close to it, but better than what we've had in the past. And we're already seeing a lot of architects starting to contact people like myself to try and move this into the next direction. So on that note, so I'm going to be creating a bridge version of this to show off at the Portland, so you can literally walk around this in your mobile phone. But I also wanted to create a Daydream version of what I call the VRPub. So I'll start with this one. So this is what I've been working on. So it's kind of like a little sandbox, and I've got this model that I found somewhere that I've retextured and redone, so it's a little more lifelike. Used ambient occlusion embedded into the vertices, and redone some textures, created some normalization maps, and then here's another view. So and then you can actually walk into it, and I hopefully will have this finished, but you'll have, Hannah, the beer maid out there to serve you beers, and she'll be animated and hand you a beer as you walk in. Hello, coming off the street. And so I ginned that together last night, but so that's the idea. You take a seat at the bar and grab yourself one. I've got some actual flickering candles and lighting. That's why it's about a 3,500 Kelvin temperature, because it's going to have that real authentic experience, and maybe you'll get a little bit virtual tipsy off of this. Okay, well, I think that's about all my items. Oh, one more thing, and I'll jump into it. I've got a bunch of them. Let me go back to my main screen here. So let's say you want to develop in VR, but you're not much of a 3D modeler, haven't had much experience. Don't let that stop you. There are tons of tools out there, and we'll start with the first one, which is the Unity. So if you're using the Unity 3 engine, you're already aware of this. It's called the Asset Store. The Asset Store has models, animations, shaders, everything that you'd like to use in the Unity engine. I've used tons of them when I created my, what did I call it, graveyard scene, some of the scenes, developed some models, but literally it's like a playground, and you can bring things in and play with them and see how things work out. So don't forget about it. Most of the pricing on this thing is really good. They have obviously developer rights so that you can apply those to whatever product you're working with. So let's look at some of the 3D models, and there's tons of them out there, and the search engine is pretty good, and the pricing, depending on the quality of the models, is dependent. And sometimes you can get some real jewels out there for very little money, and sometimes you can get full scenes for very little money. So as you can see, there's tons of them out there. Let's say you wanted a polyart wolf, you click on that, and in some cases they're animated, but this would be for something good for daydream if you wanted a daydream type experience. So a lot of these things are out there. You can just add them to your cart. You know, I've already spent a few hundred. So if you're in the Unity engine, this is a very important area to go to. Like I said, everything that you can use to create a game, they would have available to you. If you're working with the Unreal Engine, there is a lot of assets here. However, I've noticed the pricing is higher, but a lot of the models are a better quality. For instance, let's see, let's go into, where's my assets? Let's go into architectural visualization. So let's say you wanted to create a little demo. There are models already available out there. And like I said, they're somewhat pricey, but look at this, $64.99. You get this dream apartment. And this is fully textured, fully modeled apartment that you can drop into Unreal and immediately create a VR experience with it. Now, that's not a huge price in my book if you wanted to put together a great demo to show an architect what can be done in it. So as you can see there, not that difficult. Just sign in, buy it, and then immediately download the asset into the Unreal, into the library itself, and then you just click on it and it brings it up into the machine. Now the problem is these aren't set up for VR, so you normally have to bring in the content into an environment set up for VR, which includes the blueprints for running your hand controllers and so forth. But once that's done, you can do some pretty cool stuff. And obviously, if you have a sofa that looks like this, but it's a different color, just redo the textures. And maybe in another episode, we'll talk about how to do textures. There's a lot of tools out there to create bump maps, normal maps, displacement maps, specular. There are tools out there that make that super fast, super quick. So we'll work in that a little bit later. Now, there are other tools out there. So if you can't find it in either of these two tools, there's Daz 3D, which has been around for some time. They have their own little program that allows you basically for humans. And as you can see, there's a lot of human stuff. In fact, that's how I got Greta the barmaid, right? Was that the name I used for? Was I went out there, was able to obtain for like $15 an outfit, immediately export it using their exporting tool. I had to do some minor changes to it. It's not clean and perfect, but nothing really is. But obviously, if you want to make humanoid type characters, there's nothing better than Daz 3D or the next program, which is Poser, for doing so. Both of them have great exporter tools. Daz, like I said, it's completely free. They seem to be making their money off of their content. Keep in mind, their content is not royalty free. So even though you could use that to create images, you cannot take their content and put it into a game or a 3D print. We've talked about this before, but they do have a license now. I think it's like $300, $350 that do allow you to use their content. But keep that in mind that that only applies to their content, not to the other designers and artists who may be creating content. So you may have to content them to ensure that you're not violating their copyright with their device. And another one, as we talked about, was Poser, but Renderosity, I think, is owned by them now. They have a similar model, and between the two of them, you can pretty much pick anything. Again, as you notice, the female form seems to be the main goal of both of them, but there are plenty of men objects, so we're not sexist here. So you can do a lot with it. Again, both of these, both Poser and Daz, were made specifically for the human form, and they have evolved, in my opinion, a lot. And a lot of the stuff that you're seeing in magazines and so forth were originally created there. Popular Sciences uses them extensively to create some of their prototyping and rendering. Then some of the more traditional sites, obviously TurboSquid is a great place to look. Lots of content there in a lot of different formats, and that's another key thing. Make sure you get it in the format you need. TF3DM is another good site. In a lot of cases, their app products are free, so you can get something very basic. A lot of people use that to show off their stuff and make them free, so that's another one to look at. CGT isn't really a place of their own. They're like a repository, a database that then goes out to other sites. So you can look something up there and then it will take you somewhere else. So it's like a global database. And then obviously our friends out at Sketchfab, a lot of people put up models that you can then download once they're up there. So there are many models there. Again, remember copyright issues. Some people may let you use it for your own personal use, but may not allow you to use it in something that is available to the public. Then Thingiverse, mainly STLs here, but some people do provide OBJs or links to get the OBJ and textures. So, but if you wanted a basic object and then don't plan to, or plan to recolorize it, retexture it, it's a good place to start. And then obviously our friends out at Ultimaker and the Umagine sites, another location. And there are other sites. There's a place that I go to for my solid models, like phones and so forth. And I forgot to put them in there, but it'll be in the show notes. So all of these places are a good place to start. Then you can modify them, make small changes. You know, as Chris was talking about efficiency, why start from scratch? Somebody may have already done it for you, may have already created the perfect device, maybe just a small tweak or two, maybe just a color change or two. It's better from starting from the beginning. Even if you're an efficient modeler, it's always best to find something that's already done. So that's about it for my tips there, and we'll show obviously a lot more as we go through and I progress on my virtual pub, if I can stay sober long enough. Okay. On that note, Chris, you want to end our show?
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this morning, and we will see you next week on All Things 3D.
Bye.